The feminine does not always reveal herself in the open daylight. Sometimes she wears veils. Sometimes she cloaks her interest beneath gestures of indifference, silence, or even resistance. To the untrained eye, she appears distant, elusive, perhaps uninterested. But beneath the surface of her carefully drawn mask, the soul trembles. Desire hides itself not because it is weak, but because it is sacred. Carl Jung understood this paradox in the language of shadow and projection. What the woman hides is often the very thing she cannot yet reconcile within herself. She may long to surrender to the gravitational pull of attraction, yet another part of her resists, out of fear, out of pride, out of the archetypal game of concealment and revelation. The anima, within her and within you, weaves this subtle dance. You see, love is never simply a confession. It is an unveiling of unconscious forces. When a woman conceals her attraction, she has not only guarded her heart, she is wrestling with a deep river of instincts and archetypes that command her behavior. Her mask is not always deception. It is protection, ritual, initiation. And here lies the paradox. When she appears uninterested, the truth may be the opposite. It is not indifference, but intensity too overwhelming to display in daylight. The Stoics knew this tension too. What burns most fiercely is rarely announced with noise. The deepest fire smolders in silence. So look closer, not at her words alone, not at the convenient story her gestures weave, but at the fractures, the pauses, the shadows of her movements. A woman pretending not to be interested often tells on herself through the body, the gaze, the timing of her silences. She resists precisely because she feels. She hides precisely because the truth is too luminous to leave bare. And this is where you enter. You, standing at the edge of uncertainty, are asked to see with deeper eyes. The ordinary man demands certainty, confessions, declarations. But the man who has tasted Jung's teachings understands. The unconscious does not speak in straight lines. It speaks in symbols, paradoxes, contradictions. When she turns away, she may already be turning toward you. When she falls silent, she may already be screaming with longing. When she feigns indifference, she may already be enslaved by the very desire she hides. The question is not, is she interested? The question is, do you have the patience, the perception, the inner stillness to see what lies beneath the mask? Because attraction, in its purest form, is always hidden first. It does not arrive shouting. It arrives like a whisper behind the walls of her defenses, and only those who understand silence can hear it. The first veil she draws is distance, not the absence of presence, but the careful arrangement of space. She positions herself just far enough to appear untouched, yet close enough that her presence lingers on the edge of your awareness. This is not accident. It is archetype. The feminine knows, often unconsciously, that proximity without surrender creates tension, and tension is the soil in which desire grows. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the hidden side of the psyche that resists the conscious persona. In this moment, her shadow is not darkness but longing concealed. She pretends not to notice, pretends not to care, but her unconscious betrays her. The subtle lean of her body when you speak, the delayed glance she casts when she thinks you are not watching, the orchestration of silence where words might give her away. To the man untrained in seeing, these gestures dissolve into the air, invisible. But to the one who understands the psychology of desire, every movement becomes scripture. Distance is not rejection. It is a protective ritual, a defense against the vulnerability of exposure. She is not saying no. She is asking, will you notice? Will you hold the silence without demanding she fill it? Will you see her without forcing her hand? And here, the Stoic lesson enters. The one who chases every sign with hunger reveals his own emptiness. The one who waits, who observes, who allows her distance to breathe, he becomes a pillar she can lean toward. The paradox is cruel, yet eternal. By appearing indifferent, she reveals the very depth of her interest, for only what matters is hidden. What is casual is always flaunted. In her distance, she is already circling you. In her refusal to confess, she is already confessing everything. This is a hidden sign, the choreography of absence that whispers, I am near, but I will not yet fall. Show me that you can see without seizing, hear without forcing, feel without breaking the silence. For love, in its beginning, is always a shadow play, and she, like the anima itself, does not reveal her face all at once. She waits to see if your eyes can pierce through veils, not with cruelty, but with a strange tension, as though every word you speak awakens a spark she wishes to smother. She disagrees when she could have remained silent. She challenges when she could have drifted away. She rolls her eyes at the very man her heart lingers upon. This is not rejection. It is a dance of ambivalence, the paradox where interest disguises itself as opposition. Carl Jung called this enantiodromia, the tendency of things to become their opposite. Attraction does not always show itself as soft surrender. Sometimes it appears first as sharpness, friction, the push against what one secretly longs for. The psyche, terrified of vulnerability, shields itself with masks of defiance. But the mask tells more than it hides. Why would she resist if you did not matter? Why would she spend energy pushing against your presence if she felt nothing? Indifference does not argue. Indifference does not protest. Indifference does not linger long enough to push you away. Only attraction hides in the costume of contradiction. And so, when she resists, she is testing the architecture of your presence. Can you withstand her fire without collapsing into neediness? Can you recognize the hidden tenderness in her sharp words, the quiet longing in her restless defiance? The Stoics taught that external storms are never the true threat. The threat is always our reaction to them. And here the same law applies. Her resistance is not the storm that destroys, but the trial that reveals whether you are anchored. She pretends not to care, yet every glance is a battlefield. She crosses her arms, yet her body still turns slightly toward you. She interrupts, argues, challenges, yet her voice trembles with a life too intense to be neutral. This is a shadow at play, the anima concealing her flame in the disguise of smoke. If you mistake this resistance for rejection, you miss the hidden truth. For the feminine, in its raw form, often conceals attraction in paradox, testing whether the masculine presence before her can discern depth beneath the disguise. Her sharpness is not the closing of the door. It is the sound of a lock waiting for the right key. Her defiance is not the denial of desire. It is a measure of whether your presence is strong enough to hold what she fears to reveal. And so the question rises again, not about her, but about you. Can you see through the resistance without becoming defensive? Can you stand still in her storm and know that the storm is a confession in disguise? For love does not always enter gently. Sometimes it enters with thunder. She grows silent, not the silence of boredom, nor the silence of absence, but a silence alive with tension, as though words will betray her too quickly. She listens too closely. She pauses too long. Her responses come not as casual echoes, but as careful offerings, wrapped in hesitation. In Jungian psychology, the unconscious often speaks through what is not said. Through slips, omissions, silences heavy with meaning. Her silence is not emptiness. It is a chamber where desire trembles, afraid to step into the open. It is shadow, not because it is dark, but because it is unlit by the safety of confession. She pretends not to be interested, and so her lips remain closed. But her eyes betray her. Her stillness betrays her. The atmosphere between you grows charged, as though invisible currents pass in the quiet. If she truly felt nothing, the silence would be hollow, weightless. Instead, it hums, as if every unspoken word presses against a barrier of restraint. The Stoics will remind us, what matters most is not what is declared, but what endures in the space between declarations. Silence can wound, but it can also reveal. In her refusal to fill the air with words, she confesses what the words cannot safely hold. She waits, perhaps hoping you will misinterpret her quiet as indifference, when in truth it is a shield behind which she hides her fire. Look closely at her stillness. Does she linger near, though saying nothing? Does her body remain in orbit around yours, though her voice does not bridge the distance? Silence here is not absence but presence restrained. She says nothing precisely because she feels too much. In Jung's language of the Anima, this is the moment where the unconscious feminine energy withdraws inward, holding its treasure in secrecy, waiting to see whether the masculine has the patience to recognize it. The silence is a test, the ritual, the veil. If you rush to fill it, you will miss the music behind it. If you mistake it for emptiness, you will abandon the treasure hidden there. For silence is a confession too sacred to speak. And if you learn to hear it, you will discover that her quiet is not rejection, but reverence. A reverence for what is forming between you. Too fragile to be spoken, too real to be denied. So when she falls silent, do not demand words. Hold the silence with her. For in that shared stillness, the truth of her attraction already lives, breathing between you like a hidden flame. She contradicts herself. Her actions and her words weave a fabric that does not align. She says she does not care, yet her body betrays her by turning toward you. She claims she is busy, yet somehow appears in places you often stand. She insists you do not matter, yet her eyes ignite in quiet storms when you give your attention elsewhere. This is the paradox of attraction concealed. The conscious self says one thing, while the unconscious body whispers another. Jung taught that the psyche is never unified at first. It is divided, fragmented, torn between shadow and persona. What she pretends on the surface is not always what pulses beneath. The mask of indifference is her persona. The subtle betrayals of that mask are her shadow, revealing what the ego cannot admit. To notice these contradictions is to enter the deeper language of desire. Why would she mention your name in passing, then pretend you are nothing? Why would she create the impression of distance, yet remember details about you that no indifferent soul would bother to retain? This is not carelessness. It is the unconscious leaking through the cracks of her defenses. The Stoics understood this as well. Human beings are not defined by what they say, but by the truth revealed in their unguarded moments. A hand that trembles slightly, a tone that shifts unexpectedly, a gaze that lingers a fraction too long before fleeing. These inconsistencies are not accidents. They are fragments of her true self breaking through the armor. But here lies the challenge. If you confront her contradictions, she may retreat deeper into her mask. For what she hides is not simply attraction. It is vulnerability, the fear of exposure, the terror of being undone by her own longing. She resists her truth because it is too large, too raw, too uncontainable. And yet, in these very contradictions, her attraction shines most clearly, for indifference is consistent. Only desire creates such tension, such fracture between what is said and what is shown. So when you see her contradiction, do not rush to resolve it. Hold it as one would hold a mystery. Recognize that the feminine often reveals herself not in clear lines, but in paradoxes. She is the river and the fire, the silence and the storm, the yes concealed inside the no. Her inconsistency is not confusion. It is revelation. It is the mark of someone wrestling with the gravity of her own attraction, pretending not to care, yet unable to escape the orbit of your presence. Jealousy reveals what words conceal, not the loud, possessive kind that storms openly, but the quiet tightening of her breath when you give your gaze to another. She pretends not to notice, pretends it does not matter, but her body betrays her. A fleeting change in her tone, a sudden withdrawal into silence, a sharpness hidden in a joke. The mask of indifference fractures in the moment she feels replaced. Jung would call this the eruption of shadow, an unconscious confession that bursts through the cracks of persona. She may tell herself she does not care. She may even believe it. But the soul knows otherwise. The anima, that deep feminine current within her psyche, cannot help but tremble when the man who stirs her heart seems to belong to another orbit. It is not about ownership. It is about significance. If she truly felt nothing, your attention could wander freely without stirring her. But when the flame is real, even the smallest shift of your eyes awakens a storm she cannot control. She may disguise it as sarcasm, as playful critique, as sudden distance. Yet beneath it all lives a truth too fierce to ignore. She cares. The Stoic spoke of jealousy as a mirror, not the other, but of oneself. It reveals what one values most, what one fears losing, what one secretly longs to claim. And so, when she bristles at the thought of your attention elsewhere, it is not pettiness. It is revelation. Her shadow has confessed what her lips still deny. You may see it in the way she grows restless when another woman enters the room, in the sudden way her voice rises or her posture stiffens, in how she withdraws into coldness for reasons she will not explain. Each of these is not rejection, but the trembling of someone who feels far more than she wishes to admit. Here lies the paradox again. She pretends not to care, yet her jealousy speaks otherwise. She hides her interest behind indifference, yet her reaction betrays her investment. The conscious self guards, the unconscious self reveals. But here is the test for you. Do you rush to exploit her jealousy, to provoke it further? Or do you see it as a sacred signal it is, a whisper of her true attachment, fragile, unspoken, vulnerable? To play with it recklessly is to break the very thing that is forming. To honor it is to recognize that the feminine reveals herself most honestly not through declarations, but through shadows. Her jealousy is not proof of weakness. It is proof of depth. It is a wound of someone who pretends to stand apart, yet already stands too close to be untouched. Every hidden sign she gives you is not an accident. It is not randomness, nor is it chaos. It is the unconscious speaking in a dialect older than words. Jung would call the whisper the anima, revealing herself in gestures the ego cannot fully control. And when a woman is interested but pretends she is not, the mask she wears is not only for you, it is also for herself. Her silence, her avoidance, her calculated indifference. These are not rejections. They are shields. They are mirrors of her inner conflict, where desire collides with fear, and attraction intertwines with the dread of losing control. Watch closely, for when she refuses to meet your eyes, her pupils betray her. When she speaks coldly, her tone holds the warmth of what she conceals. This duality is the theater of the psyche, the outer mass of restraint and the inner tide of longing. Just as night conceals the stars until your eyes adjust, so too does her disguise demand that you look deeper than surface appearances. She is testing not only your perception but your depth, whether you can sense the unspoken, whether you can withstand the paradox of her approach and retreat. In her, you see the archetype of Persephone, half in shadow, half in light, who does not step willingly into vulnerability, but longs to be claimed by someone who can endure her contradictions. To miss these signs is to remain blind to the very essence of feminine attraction. Its subtlety, its refusal to announce itself, its demand that you enter the unconscious with patience, with courage, with vision. The Stoics remind us, what is hidden is not absent, and Jung reminds us, what is resisted is most alive. So when she withdraws, it may be her deepest invitation. When she conceals, it may be her boldest confession. The truth of her interest lies not in what she says, but in what her silence aches to reveal. What you must understand is this: attraction rarely arrives in a straight line. It does not knock politely at the door and announce itself. It weaves, it hides, it flickers like firelight on stone walls. Her interest, disguised beneath indifference, is not a denial, it is an initiation. She is inviting you into the labyrinth of her psyche, where shadow and desire dance in silence. Her hesitation is not emptiness, but a test of resonance. If she were to reveal her longing too quickly, she would risk shattering the fragile veil that protects her vulnerability. So instead, she cloaks her interest in disguise, an averted glance, a sudden withdrawal, a tone sharpened with feigned attachment. And yet, beneath these defenses, her energy betrays her. The way she lingers just slightly longer than necessary, the way her body orbits near yours as if compelled by an unseen gravity. In Jung's language, this is projection at play. She casts her own desires outward, then hides from them, pretending they belong to no one. She may mock her own attraction, diminish it, or frame it as coincidence. But the very act of denial reveals its opposite. The deeper the resistance, the stronger the pull. The unconscious never lies. It only speaks in paradox. And here lies a challenge for you. Will you react to the surface, or will you listen to the depth? If you mistake her defenses for disinterest, you abandon the path too soon. If you chase her mask with hunger, you fracture the delicate balance. What she secretly craves is not the man who lunges at her shadows, but the man who can stand still in mystery, the man who does not demand clarity, but instead understands that desire often hides in disguise, waiting for patience to draw it out. The Stoics would say, endure ambiguity without grasping. Jung would add, embrace the shadow, for within it lies the treasure you seek. And in the feminine heart, these truths converge. Her concealed interest is not meant to frustrate you, but to reveal the man who sees beyond illusion, the one who understands that the greatest signs are written not in words, but in silence. But here is where many men falter. They do not see her silence for what it is, a veil of protection. They see it as rejection. They do not hear her disguised signals as whispers of longing. They hear them as indifference. And so, in their haste, they retreat, or worse, they project their own wounds upon her. This is the masculine shadow at work. A man abandoned in childhood may see her pause as abandonment. A man humiliated by rejection may see her reserve as mockery. A man unsure of his own worth may convince himself she does not see him at all. In truth, it is not her mask that wounds him. It is his own reflection staring back at him through her restraint. She becomes a mirror, and he recoils from what he sees within himself. Jung spoke of projection as the great thief of love. For in projection, one no longer sees the other, but only the fragments of their own unlived life, cast outward like ghosts. If a man cannot face these shadows within, he will forever misread her hidden signs. He will confuse her play of distance with cruelty, her hesitations with dismissal, her tests with final judgment. He will walk away, never knowing that beneath her disguise burned a quiet fire, waiting only for patience, strength, and presence to bring it into light. And so, individuation demands courage. It demands that you, the man who longs to read her truth, first strip away your illusions. You must meet your own abandonment without flinching. You must face your fear of rejection and stand within it until it no longer rules you. Only then will you see her not as a puzzle, but as a woman carrying her own shadows, her own fears, her own cautious desire. This is where attraction becomes alchemy. For when you hold steady against your own storm, you no longer project your wounds onto her. You see her masked for what they are, fragile veils that protect a vulnerable heart. And it is in that moment that the feminine recognizes something rare, a man who does not collapse into projection, but one who sees her with clear eyes, one who listens to what is not spoken, one who reads the truth written in silence. At the end, what remains is not a list of signals to decode, but a deeper invitation to step beyond appearances, beyond the mask she wears, and into symbolic space where love demands awareness. For the final hidden sign is not in her words, nor her gestures, nor even in her silences. It is in the way she allows you to remain in her presence, even when she pretends not to care. For if she were truly indifferent, she would vanish. Indifference does not circle. It does not hover. It does not return to the same flame again and again. Only interest, cloaked in hesitation, behaves this way. It is the archetype of Persephone lingering at the threshold, half in shadow, half in light, waiting to see if the man before her is Hades who will consume, or Orpheus who will descend and still dare to sing. Jung wrote that every encounter between man and woman is not just personal. It is mythological. She is not only the woman before you. She is also the anima, the feminine within your soul, testing your capacity for wholeness. When she hides her interest, she is not only protecting herself, she is asking you, can you see beyond the veil? Can you discern love in disguise? Can you hold the tension of uncertainty without fleeing into despair or force? And so the hidden truth is this. When a woman pretends not to be interested, yet lingers, it is not rejection, but initiation. She is summoning forth a different kind of man, not one who demands instant clarity, but one who can dwell in ambiguity, not one who collapses into hunger of ego, but one who can wait, steady and grounded, until the mask dissolves on its own. This is not a game. It is a rite of passage. For love, when it is real, does not reveal itself to those who rush. It unveils itself to those who can sit with mystery. The man who can see her hidden signs without grasping at them, who can endure her disguises without resenting them, who can wait without losing faith. He is the man she was testing for all along. And in the quietest moment, when he does not expect it, she will drop the veil. A glance will linger too long. A silence will soften. A word will slip, carrying warmth unguarded. And he will know, not because she told him outright, but because he himself had become the kind of man who could finally see. This is a true alchemy of love, not chasing signs, not demanding certainty, but entering the myth of her hiddenness and emerging not only with her affection, but with the deeper knowledge that every love story is also the story of your own soul, waiting to be made whole. If these words have stirred something within you, if you have seen yourself in these shadows, or recognize her hidden signs reflected in your own life, do not let the journey end here. Step deeper. Breathe slower. Let the silence between us carry you into reflection. Subscribe, so you do not walk alone on this path of understanding the unconscious dance between men and women. Turn on the bell, so each new unveiling finds you when you are ready to see it. Share this with someone who needs to hear that love is more than surface, more than words, more than fear disguised as indifference. And in the comments below, leave your truth. Tell us where you have seen these signs, where you have struggled with masks, where the Anima and Animus have met in longing, confusion, or revelation. Your story may awaken another. This is not just a channel. It is a sanctuary for those who dare to see beneath appearances, for those who seek not games, but archetypes, not distractions, but depth. Stay, if you are ready to look beyond the veil. Because here, we do not simply talk about love. We descend into it.